you have traditional leaders and their responsibilities, and then you have the central government. The whole approach would be collaboration. How do they work in tandem in order to deliver services to the population that they serve? That's the important thing. Where resources, it may not be total wastage when it comes to facilitating in any way. Like you said, they've been collaboration between the Buganda Kingdom and the central government on several issues. But we still, at the end of the day, demand a lot more from the government. You know how we found ourselves in a situation where we are today. There was the abolition of kingdoms by Mr. Obote in the past. Buganda's assets, a lot of assets were confiscated. And today there's still conversations about returning what belonged to the Buganda Kingdom. Actually, the government uses some of these facilities to do their own, to run. It still operates in some of these land assets and buildings and stuff like that, and we owed rent. Okay, we in large sums, minuscule compared to what a cow is valued at. So, for us, we want to engage the government on those larger issues, what we are owed, as opposed to, hey, because the government says, we think you need transportation to better serve your people. Here is a car. No, we actually need the other bigger pieces to better deliver to our people than just transportation facilitation, because we're already handling that anyway.
No, Mr. Salongo, maybe before Agaba comes in, probably you could also answer this. Why, the question is, and from what I've been seeing in the media, is why now does the government come out to give, those expensive cars, as Agaba said, to the traditional leaders? And my question is, really, did we have to give them the cars now, especially when we're going towards elections? Do we think that probably the government is trying to woo the traditional leaders on each side? Is it a form of corruption, as Agaba says? Once Chigun says, yeah, we need transportation, but we need a lot more. Now, when Chigun says we need a lot more, then I would say he's being selfish, because, as you say, the Buganda government probably is rich. They can afford to facilitate their king. But there are some kingdoms probably which need this money, which need this car, that they would need them. So, Agaba, as you come in, do you think it was necessary, especially at this time when we were into elections? It came even before the NRM primaries. Definitely a year or a few months before the general elections. What is your take on that?
No, we all know what the intention is. It's to influence these cultural leaders in the upcoming elections. But going back to Mr. Chigundu, like you said, the unfairness, which I agree with you, Godfrey, is Buganda always looks at itself as the victim. They've never sat down and asked themselves, first and foremost, the NRM government did not create the predicament we are in right now. They found it here. Obote created it. But has anybody ever asked, why did Buganda and Obote fall out? They are looking at the action Obote took. I'm not saying what Obote did was right, but was it necessary at that time? Why would a prime minister, react in the way he reacted? Then when we go back to the 1900 agreement, what was the role of Buganda in the colonization of Uganda? So when we go back to these issues and start to understand the Bunyangabus, the Bugangaisis issues, then we can answer a lot of issues my brother Chigundu is talking about. Now, the new government's coming in, regardless whether it's Museveni or not, they're in a tough predicament, because when they came in, for most of what Buganda is asking for had been taken on by Ugandans. Some of them got the land, the properties and everything legitimately, sold off by some past Bugandas who are no longer here. So at the end of the day, what does government do because Mengo wants to use its strength, because it's the most, it's the biggest kingdom and the most populous tribe in Uganda, wants to use that to their advantage to blackmail politicians, saying, hey, we won't support you if you don't give us this. But then you have also a president who's a president of the entire country.
Yes, welcome, dear friends, on our weekly news roundup. This is a program that we started about a month or so ago, and we had wanted to run it bi-weekly, but we have to apologize that we are all busy. But we respect you, our viewers, our listeners, and here we are today. And guess what? We started when we are two, and today we are being joined by another, I don't know whether to call him a senior citizen or a young citizen. He's just there. So today we have very senior guys, whom I think I will just call on, and I begin with CEO Tukikube Media, Salongo Chigundu, and Chigundu, I know why you're smiling. I know why, and
why?
Yeah, you can say, you can greet our viewers, and then I'll break I'll break the news.
Okay, okay. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, our viewers, wherever you are around the world. Salongo Chigundu is my name. I am happy again to be the host of these distinguished journalists. You guys are journalists. I'm not a journalist by training. That's why I smile every time I get the opportunity to have conversations with you. So for me, that is the reason I'm smiling. I don't know why you think I'm smiling.
No, I will come to that. I know, of course, people have been seeing you as Tukikube Chigundu.
Yes, they know me as Tukikube here in the diaspora, and that is who I'm most popularly known as. But I am a private citizen of the Midwest, as I call it, Maseka Tiga America, right? That's the acronym that I use. I am a father and a husband, but I also represent the Kabaka of Buganda in this region. I am part of that establishment. I think that's a little bit about me in a brief, right?
Okay, that is good. I will come to the other one later. And Agaba Bani, my brother, can you also give salutations to our viewers? I know it's your first time to appear on this show, but you're a man who has been in the media all over. You don't need introduction, but just say a few words about yourself, and then we move on.
Good morning, good evening, viewers, those watching us both here in the United States and back home in Africa and elsewhere. My name is Agaba Babi Gumera. Everybody calls me Babi. The first four letters of my second name. I'm a Ugandan American living in the Midwest like my host, Mr. Chigundu. However, I keep my ears on the ground on what happens back home because we have a lot of interests back home. We have a lot of family, and that's where many of us started our stories. So that's me.
Yes, welcome, and I'm Kaitarama Godfrey. I think I'm going to be moderating this show. So Agaba, today is a very special day for the CEO for Tukikube Media, Salongo Chigundu's wife. Nalongo is celebrating her birthday. Oh.
Yeah. So this is a special episode that we're recording. It happens to be Nalongo's birthday. So yes. Thank you for pointing that out. Happy birthday, Nalongo. May you live long. We appreciate you, love you, thank you for all that you do for me and the family. And the
community.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
We are very proud of what Nalongo does for our community. Nalongo, wherever you are, we wish you a happy birthday. I know you're going to watch, and please leave a comment. And our viewers would want you to wish Nalongo a happy birthday. We're not going to mention her age, but probably I know she's about 18, 20, around that. And we'll leave it at that.
Yes, I'm not going to throw any number either, but I don't want to get in trouble.
You don't want to recognize the birthday.
So gentlemen, you are welcome. This discussion is, we are looking at our weekly news roundup, and we're talking about so many topics. But, back home, I know so many things have taken place. We saw elections, the primary elections for NRM, and many other stories. But I just want to give each one of you a minute or so, to pick up those stories, either within or around the world, that you think really caught your eye, that you want to share with our viewers, and then we can take it from there. I know, Babi Gumira, I know you are ready. Give you a minute also to, share with us those stories that caught your eye, that you need our viewers to know about.
A lot caught my eye both on the international and local stage. I don't know, being a Ugandan American, I no longer know whether it's America is local to me or Uganda is local to me. So I don't know which one is local because I'm a resident here in the United States. We're seeing a lot coming out of, say, Washington regarding Africa. That's, to me, a big one, how it affects us, because these are very strong partners in a lot of ways with the African countries. So a lot of statements or actions taken affect African countries. Then going back to Uganda, we are looking at a political season that is marred with a lot of violence from different political parties, and we are wondering what's going on. Are we moving forward? There's a lot that is happening in there. I think we'll go into that in depth later as we discuss this. And then when we also go to other neighboring African countries, we see what is happening in Kenya. The political temperature raising. Is Kenya going the right way are they on the right way on their political journey? Then when you go to Congo, we also see Congo reached an agreement, but was that agreement signed in the interest of the Congolese and the African people, or someone else is going to benefit from that? So I don't want so much to go into the Middle East because that's a little far away from us. I wouldn't want to touch on to that, but I would want to focus on Africa and how we relate to the rest of the world. So those are some of my concerns, and that's what I've observed this week.
Yeah, talking about Kenya, neighboring Kenya, I know the tension in Kenya really is too much, and what happens in Kenya then affects the rest of the East African region. Chikundo, now that Agaba mentions Kenya, what do you take of the violence that is in Kenya? What do you talk of how President Ruto is handling this whole, thing in Kenya? What is your view on that?
What do I think about the violence? It continues to show dissatisfaction of a core component of the world today, not just even our region, but the whole world today, which is the young people, and how they feel about their own future. They are totally dissatisfied. They are totally frustrated. And it looks like the only option is for them to get out on the streets and express themselves that way, because they don't seem to have any other way of channeling their frustration. Nothing else seems to work for them. When they go to social media, they call on their leaders to respond to their concerns. Looks like they're not getting anything. So they're spilling out on the streets. How is Mr. Ruto handling it? I think he's doing the best he can. His partners in the region may want to see him counter that with even more violence, which would, in my view, make it even worse. I think he's doing the best he can under the circumstances. It's a really tough situation because they are young, they have a lot of energy, they are frustrated, and yeah, it's a tough situation. I think he's doing the best he can under the circumstances. I wouldn't recommend that he listens to those other leaders in the region clamping down with more force, because I think it will make it even worse. So I would say listening, being responsive is a better approach.
So, Agaba, we had a similar one. The Gen Zs almost took over the power in Kenya until we saw when Ruto and Odinga came together, for that, and when he wanted to stand for the African Union, and, we had that kind of calmness. But now we are seeing Ruto and Odinga on one side, but now the Gen Zs are coming out and saying, no. Do we see ourselves going the way Tunisia came, the Arab world? If it continues like this, do you see, for instance, Ruto, when this thing came in, he changed the entire cabinet. When they changed the entire cabinet, they said, that is not what we want. So until Odinga came in the picture, he almost left. Agaba, where do you see this thing going, since you're the one who brought it?
I think there is a transition going on in Kenya. That's what maybe many people are not realizing. I think Kenyans are moving away from the old generation of leaders. I don't even know why Raila Odinga is still in the field of politics in Kenya. It's outdated. Kenya has moved on. When you look at that alliance of Odinga and Ruto, I think, would have been a very progressive leader, but Ruto doesn't seem to kind of galvanize and bring together the politicians in Kenya, because there's so much divide in Kenya. Now, when you look at the Gen Z, they are not demanding for leadership. They are not demanding we want to take over power, but they have their demands. They want employment. They want things like healthcare. They want good roads. They are looking for things like this, but they are not getting things like that. Instead, they are seeing a government that is trying to impose more taxes on them, and yet some of them cannot afford, and that's why they are praising. These are very informed people. Kenyans are very informed. So when they see that there is no clear leadership at the top, then what do they revert to? Because they put a tax, I think, on the mobile phones, and the High Court had to reverse that. But that was after all these protests went on, 31 people killed, and they were very violent. And Ruto didn't seem to know how to handle the situation. So until Ruto brings everybody together, includes all the stakeholders, and maybe, to me, I think some of our leaders do not even understand their own countries. Understand the needs of your people. See how best you're going to work with your people to overcome the challenges you face. Then this friction is likely to, be managed. But most times what we do in Africa, when I get power, I know Godfrey is my friend. Why don't you come and we work together? Chigund, you're my friend. Let's come and work together, regardless of whether you're qualified or not. And when there is that failure in service delivery, that's where we see a lot of people getting disgruntled. The rule of law breaks, systems break. People break down because there is compromised service delivery. And that's why we are seeing in Kenya all this happening from the young people demanding for better. It's not that they hate Ruto as a person. No, they are calling for his resignation. They want him to resign because they feel he has failed to deliver to their expectations.
Chigund says Ruto should not listen to other people. I hope that is not what I'm thinking. Chigund, when you
should not listen to what they are saying. They might be instinct, in my reading, from others in the region, saying, challenging him to clamp down, to not let these young people take over. That seems to be, Agaba has the same fear that they might just, run the government. No, it wasn't Agaba, it was you who thought that we could see like an Arab Spring of some kind where violence engulfs the country. And nobody wants to see that. And I wouldn't want to see that. But I don't want to see a clamp down. I want to see response to their concerns and be more responsive. But again, the issue that they're bringing up, the kids, is mostly about finances. Ruto is saying the country.
Yeah, when you talk the kids, I mean the Gen Z?
The Gen Zs, yes. The Gen Zs didn't like the proposed financial changes. I think it was a tax that was being clamped down on them. Ruto is bringing it up because he's worried about the long-term fiscal picture of the country, where they need to draw down dependence on foreign loans, which means you have to increase local collection of tax. But the kids, not only are they not employed, they're not used to paying. They're resisting paying a higher tax towards their own services. It's an egg and chicken situation. You either borrow money to deliver services, or you tax the local population to deliver. So maybe they need to figure out how to ease them into where they have to pay more to get more, but clamping down using violence is not going to do it. More violence, meaning the security apparatus. That's where my fear is.
Whatever the case.
In protests, you're not going to avoid violence, because in most times the rule of law breaks down. But on people being opposed to raising taxes, governments run on taxes. And I don't think that's the issue in Africa, being taxed. The challenge is when these Africans are taxed, this money doesn't get back to them in form of services. There is no country on earth I know of that does not depend on others. Even those that have overcome this burden of borrowing started off borrowing until they built that capacity. So if you look at the people, say in Kenya, I don't have the statistics, I won't learn. How many people are directly taxed by government? How many people file their taxes? So if Kenya wants to go that route of saying we are independent, definitely it's going to have a lot of these kind of reactions from the people. People are going to feel, you see, the local person does not understand how government operates. And there is little civic education to these populations, how governments operate. As much as people think governments print money, governments don't operate in isolation. They work with international bodies or other regional bodies. So you must have a certain amount of money circulated into the public. So if that money is losing value very fast, then there's a problem. And if governments are not fixing these problems, because for me, I think our biggest problem is corruption. A lot of money is taken out out of circulation into the hands of few. And most of these people either keep this money where we don't know and not reinvested in our economies. Then we embraced this privatization, calling in investors. Investors have come in, invested in our economies, and they also suck out money from us, repatriating this money back to their home countries. So that leaves a huge gap because there is little investments in our own economies, yet a lot of our money leaves these economies. Even the money we get as aid ends up in the pockets of few people who either invest in foreign capitals or elsewhere, but not in the home economies, because they're going to be questioned, where did you get this money from? So for fear of that, that money is kept somewhere else. So because of these gaps, we have the ordinary masses raising up, demanding for services. But if we had better management of our resources, I can tell you the truth that African countries have enough resources to serve their people, and their people would be very, very, very satisfied.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I know the Kenya situation is worrying, especially to the neighboring countries, and we don't want what happened to happen again. You remember when there was that war between Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga? We don't want to, as Ugandans, we are concerned, but all we wish is, I mean, the Gen Zs and Ruto and team, if they can sit down without any foreign interference to come up with something that can, solve Kenya's problem. Chikundu, your highlight?
Wait, on that, as you said, I think they also have to address the issue of ethnicity. It seems their politics is also moving towards ethnicity instead of what unites them. Hey, I belong to this group of people. I belong here. So we have to unite in order to govern. If they don't move away from that, they are going to have major problems going forward.
For Kenya, it may be difficult because different from other countries, especially Uganda, Kenyans, they must really be that. That's what defines them. That the people who follow Ruto, they follow him because he's probably Kalenjini. The ones who follow Odinga is because of that. So all we have to pray is that they don't degenerate into chaos. We don't want that. That's why we have to say, let's keep our ears on the ground and pray for them. Chibundo, your highlight of the week, of the month, of weeks?
Yeah, excuse me. So this week, I noted two things. One, in East Africa, as I mentioned, introduced myself earlier, I am the deputy, excuse me, of the representative of the Kingdom of Uganda here in the Midwest. And I follow what's going on and how it impacts the Kingdom of Uganda, the politics particularly, and other issues. But in Uganda, part of the, I must say, politicking, I think I can categorize it. I think it is politics time, and it is what it is. But there was a whole lavish ceremony where the government of Uganda handed out some transportation means to other traditional readers in Uganda, and it became a topic of conversation because everybody was saying, well, what about Uganda? How come Uganda did not receive a car? Well, the kingdom came out and clarified that we were not told about anything when it comes to these cars. We were not approached. We were not given any alternatives or anything. We just didn't participate in this whole endeavor. And we also clarified that we have traditions and norms. When it comes to the Kabaka of Uganda, the different clans have different roles, right? So you just don't come up and offer to transport the Kabaka. We call that okukongoja. So that is a responsibility of a particular clan. So and that is how it is handled. So offering a Kabaka a means of transportation would be a violation of those norms. So Kabaka's transportation is handled by a specific clan. So that's why we just don't accept any donations of transportation from any entity, any party, any government around the world.
No, before you leave that topic, now since you are part of the Buganda Kingdom in the Midwest here, and I know you are probably whatever you speak is nothing but the truth. Now I get,
but I don't speak for the kingdom. I have to put a claim.
No worries,
I am not the spokesperson.
Yes, but at least we are going to take your statement.
Okay.
I get a contradiction from your statement. You say the Buganda government was not invited, but at the same time,
was not invited. No, I say the Buganda kingdom clarified that yes, for us we were not
informed.
This is not something that we engage with. There may have been some peripheral discussions on the side. A minister visits the Katikiro, they have a conversation, but there was no, hey, you guys, you must come over here. We are coming. We're giving out cars. Come over here. We are gathering in Kororo, wherever the gathering was. the kingdom came out and clarified that there was no such an official engagement about that.
Yeah, because the media was awash that traditional kings and kingdoms were given cars. Actually, notably present, I think I saw the Chabazinga, Pictiz, and others. So when you say that the kingdom of Uganda was not, what does that mean? Agaba, you hear what Chigundu says?
I'm gonna respond to that.
Yes, please. What's your say on that? Because he says tradition. I mean, for them.
No, I think that's being. I'm sorry. I think Mengo, which is Buganda, is being hypocritical on this. Because if they say they have someone who is responsible for the Kabaka's transport or who's responsible for this and that, we all know in the past Buganda has greatly Mengo, the Kabaka and his team have greatly benefited from this government. Not only cars, and they've received cars before from the government. So what happened this time? I know it over time, it has grown strong, it has become very wealthy. Now they're at a point where they feel they can afford this, and now they look at this offer as something too small they can forego for publicity. But they've, in the past, received so much from the president, the prime minister, the Kabaka, and some other officials. So why didn't they from day one say, no, we have our own means? And to respond to my brother, I agree that Kabaka not taking the car, because I also feel government should not have wasted taxpayers to buy such luxury cars for these traditional leaders. They are rich. The Kabaka is rich. That's why he can say, I don't need this car. Because you're going to give most of these people these cars. They cannot even maintain them. The maintenance cost alone is very high, you know. So what happens when they can't maintain them? So everything, the way it's being done, I think it's not well thought out. If Buganda was not involved, that was wrong, because Buganda could have used those funds for something else. There are a lot of needs in Buganda, you know. So the government should prioritize where they invest taxpayers' money, because to some of us, we see that as wastage. Does Buganda need a car? Does the king of Toro need a car? Does all these traditional leaders need really cars?
I think they need transport. They could use transportation, but what kind of transportation? But in any way, it is you have traditional leaders and their responsibilities, and then you have the central government. The whole approach would be collaboration. How do they work in tandem in order to deliver services to the population that they serve? That's the important thing. Where resources, it may not be total wastage when it comes to facilitating in any way. Like you said, they've been collaboration between the Buganda Kingdom and the central government on several issues. But we still, at the end of the day, demand a lot more from the government. You know how we found ourselves in a situation where we are today. There was the abolition of kingdoms by Mr. Obote in the past. Buganda's assets, a lot of assets were confiscated. And today there's still conversations about returning what belonged to the Buganda Kingdom. Actually, the government uses some of these facilities to do their own, to run, it still operates in some of these land assets and or buildings and stuff like that. And we're owed rent. Okay? We in large sums, minuscule compared to what a cow is valued at. So for us, we want to engage the government on those larger issues, what we are owed, as opposed to, hey, because the government says, we think you need transportation to better serve your people. Here is a car. No, we actually need the other bigger pieces to better deliver to our people than just transportation facilitation, because we're already handling that anyway.
No, Mr. Salongo, maybe before Agaba comes in, probably you could also answer this. why, the question is, and from what I've been seeing in the media, is why now does the government come out to give, those expensive cars, as Agaba said, to the traditional leaders? And my question is, really, did we have to give them the cars now, especially when we are going towards elections? Do we think that probably the government is trying to woo the traditional leaders on each side? Is it a form of corruption, as Agaba says? Once Chigun says, yeah, we need transportation, but we need a lot more. Now, when Chigun says we need a lot more, then I would say he's being selfish because, as you say, the Buganda government probably is rich. They can afford to facilitate their king. But there are some kingdoms probably which need this money, which need this car, that they would need them. So, Agaba, as you come in, do you think it was necessary, especially at this time when we were into elections? It came even before the NRM primaries. Definitely a year or 3 months before the general elections. What is your take on that?
No, we all know what the intention is. It's to influence these cultural leaders in the upcoming elections. But going back to Mr. Chigundo, like you said, the unfairness, which I agree with you, Godfrey, is Buganda always looks at itself as the victim. They've never sat down and ask themselves, first and foremost, the NRM government did not create the predicament we are in right now. They found it here. Obote created it. But has anybody ever asked, why did Buganda and Obote fall out? They are looking at the action Obote took. I'm not saying what Obote did was right, but was it necessary at that time? Why would a prime minister react in the way he reacted? Then when we go back to the 1900 agreement, what was the role of Buganda in the colonization of Uganda? So when we go back to these issues and start to understand the Bunyangabus, the Bugangaisis issues, then we can answer a lot of issues my brother Chigundu is talking about. Now, the new government's coming in, regardless whether it's Museveni or not, they're in a tough predicament. Because when they came in, for most of what Buganda is asking for had been taken on by Ugandans. Some of them got the land, the properties and everything legitimately, sold off by some past Bagandas who are no longer here. So at the end of the day, what does government do? Because Mengo wants to use its strength, because it's the it's the biggest kingdom and the most populous tribe in Uganda, wants to use that to their advantage to blackmail politicians, saying, hey, we won't support you if you don't give us this. But then you have also a president who's a president of the entire country. Godfrey, you learned genuinely, how do I come as a president and say, because Mengo wants this, I'm going to give you taxpayers' money and take this land and give it back to Buganda, when actually Buganda was at the center of the conflicts that we've had. They created these conflicts. And I'm not saying that we should punish, the country should punish them for that. But how do we reconcile without them crying out to look like they are the victims? That's what they do every day. They're like they're victims. It's like Obote went against them out of nowhere. Obote had reasons. Unfortunately, he overreacted because when Obote was in the north, what was Mengo planning for him?
Agawa, so, yes. Agawa, we may have to, bring this topic, because I know it's a wide topic, and remember we have Omukungu Wakawaka on this show, and I know when you start talking about that, Chigundu wants to respond, and when he responds, it means that will never end. However, yes, because Chigundu is a king, is an official, there are certain allegations which I don't want to go, I know you want to respond, just because Agaba wants to take us, he's bringing
without trying to get too deep into that, all I can say is that we have a history, complicated history as Uganda, and it is part of our reality. The way we formed ultimately as Uganda has a lot to do with the challenges that we face today. That's why we can only solve these things through continuous engagement and honesty about the past. The crisis of 1966 was caused by, again, the balancing between what formed into starting, balancing what went into forming Uganda. Everybody coming into this union Uganda came with something, okay? So we just simply cannot ignore that. Everybody had a contribution to make, and everybody had a strength and a weakness to bring to the table, but that's what it is. So we cannot simply say confiscation, like happened, is how to normalize whatever injustice or imbalance is perceived. So we have to go back and re-engage on that and have a really good, candid conversation as Ugandans. I will leave it at that. I will not try to expand it. We'll always, engage with it another day.
I will say one thing last. I have enormous respect for the Kabaka. I greatly respect that man, and I think because of his leadership, that's why we are seeing a lot of stability in the country. I think he and Museveni behind the scenes, there is a way they talk, because if these leaders who are not on the same page, that country would be in chaos. So I have great respect for the Kabaka, for the way he has reigned in his kingdom, and I hope that he continues to do that for the stability of the country. The other one is a politician. This is a traditional leader who's greatly loved. His word could turn that country upside down. So I give thanks to the Kabaka for understanding the challenges that are there and still remain calm and lead with a sober head. That I give it to the Kabaka.
All right, fair enough. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, these are hard topics.
I took Chigundu to respond, the Buganda kingdom not speaking the car because Chigundu said, but anyway. Let's
No, on that one, our Minister of Information was very clear. And the statement is out there. I think everybody has the opportunity to see it. If not, it simply says, we did not receive any formal communication about the car. There was some conversations inside, on the side, in meetings here and there, but we did not engage with that officially. And like we say, for us, when it comes to, we're thankful that the government works with us on numerous things. Numerous things. The Buganda Kingdom, through numerous communications, has expressed that. And we're not saying that those who received cars did a very bad thing, but for us, we said, no, we want to engage on these larger issues than, in transportation facilitation, because we have traditionally those who are the role to play in facilitating that.
For the sake of our viewers,
and
bring Agawa again, this conversation cannot end. You can give me the other highlight, and then we are going to be closing because I see time is going.
Okay. So the other highlight was.
So before, let me guide on this before we even go, not the Kabaka issue, but I want us to be very honest and open the way we see the West does their kind of talks. I know it could be sensitive, but the problem and the challenge we have as Africans, we fear to discuss issues because we know we are going to annoy someone, and a lot is left unsaid because of that fear. I respect the Kabaka, I respect Mr. Museveni, but at the end of the day, do their actions as leaders affect me? So for me to fear to talk about him because I'm going to anger him when he's doing wrong, that's not the kind of man I am. Because as a person who's a beneficiary of their leadership, their action, I just like I've lived in America long enough to know that if you don't speak up, nobody's going to speak up for you. And the question is, if you're doing certain things that are not in my interest, what makes you think that I should bow down for you if you're not representing me well? And I agree, that car is a gift which either you take or leave. If Buganda doesn't take it, does that break the relationship with a government? So it's not a big issue like my brother here, Chigundo, has said. That's not the big issue. There are bigger issues to grind than just a car issue. You know,
Agaba, as the moderator for this show, I told you Chigundo is an official of the Uganda Kingdom. So let's go with the official statement from the kingdom. We go with that. Otherwise, that's what we have to do.
Okay.
So the other
highlight was I noted as a citizen of the Midwest here, Mr. Agaba says we pay attention to what our government does too here. So Mr. Trump has had this campaign of deporting immigrants, like he promised in his campaign. And he has run into the challenge where some countries have refused to accept their own citizens. We don't want them. And some countries are right, because Trump is telling them that, here, I'm bringing you back this individual because he's very dangerous. He called them barbaric. He said, these are barbaric individuals, I have to bring them back to you. So these countries say, no, don't bring them back here. They refused. Several countries refused to accept their own citizens. So he had to look for a third party country to take them in, so that he can fulfill his well advertised effort of deporting criminals. So he went on to an African country and found on the African continent and engaged a small African nation called Eswatini. And this country accepted 5 foreign nationals from the countries of Vietnam, Jamaica, Cuba, Yemen, and Laos. Eswatini, as a third country accepting these barbaric, uniquely barbaric according to the American administration, individuals. Now, the question is, why? Why were they promised something in return? Development aid? Maybe favor, diplomatic favors? What is the incentive there? Because one wonders, as an African, do they have the capacity? If these individuals are so barbaric, do they have the capacity to securely imprison them? Secondly, do they even have the capacity to rehabilitate them? What is the long-term objective of this? Is this just a dump? Here, you take them, you get this in return. And what is the long-term impact of a small African nation accepting such deportees? So that I became interested in that, and I would love to know what you guys think or what our viewers think. But it was something that I noted. It caught my eye. It caught my eye.
Agaba here is an African small state which accepts the barbaric, the criminals. Any comment on that?
Yeah, I think by nature Africans are submissive and timid. Whatever is thrown at us, sometimes we don't have the spine, the backbone to say no. And we've seen this with several African presidents that have visited Washington. None of them could stand up to, defend the position they were in. They went along with what they were told. We saw an African journalist who thought she speaks for the entire African presidents. All African presidents are happy with you. So she was literally laying it down for this guy that we are all at your feet. And that made me question, did she talk to every African president for her to come up with that statement? And then puts a very difficult question to the African presidents. Instead of distancing themselves from that, they all seem to, play into the trap, accepting that, yeah, we'll support this guy for this and this and that. But that said, for Africa to accept criminals who are not their citizens when their country of origin has rejected them is a shame. And what, like Mr. Chigundo has asked, what is in for them in return? So, and more to that, I do not want to believe a lot that is coming from this administration, because they say one thing, then you see the other. You're talking of criminals, but then we have kids who are being picked from daycare, from schools, people who are citizens being arrested. So which is which? Who is a criminal? So to be honest, I wouldn't want to so much trust what is happening right now. And I believe the next president coming in is going to have a lot of challenges. It seems there is a systematic plan to reshape the country in a certain way. And we are seeing the Supreme Court actually shamelessly supporting these actually the barbaric acts, some of the barbaric acts we are seeing. You may say people are barbaric, but if you're arresting people masked, no identity, doing all these kinds of things, you can't be calling other people barbaric when actually we are seeing the same acts on the streets of the United States. That's something that nobody ever expected. This is the best democracy in the world. This is the best country in the world, because why we call it the best democracy, the best country in the world, this is a country that brings everybody from every different walk of life and bring them in here. So when they come in here, how the rule of law brings people together and they all do the same things and grow and develop and become successful as a nation is unimaginable. It's amazing. Now, when we get a leader like when we get a leader like we have today and creates a situation that we are in right now, that is giving a huge challenge. And we've seen it that every time a president who comes in after him has an enormous challenge to clean up the mess he has left behind. Now, when the president comes in next, what is going to happen to these people who are being ripped off their wrongly ripped off their rights? People are being fired, losing their jobs, people being deported. So we provoking wars we shouldn't be provoking in the name of business. So I don't know. In these 4 years, nobody today can predict what's going to happen with because there is no any coherent kind of plan from the White House that this is what we need to do. It's like you wake up in the morning, something just falls down. Boom, we're doing this. But one thing I know they've been very consistent with, like I said, is immigration. Now, this African country, I do not know. I do not speak for them. I'm not read about it. Why they are accepting criminals that are not their citizens? You're not bringing tourists. You're bringing as they describe them, everybody would want to distance themselves away from them. They are dumping to you the worst of the worst, and you are.
Yeah, but maybe Babi, as we wrap up on this, we can look at it in many ways. One of them, Chigundu suspects maybe money exchanged hands. But supposing we also look at the other country probably having said that since their countries rejected them, Africa is a hospitable continent. We receive them. Are you not looking at that they received them? Probably these people didn't have where to go. Why do we think that money must have changed hands the way Chigundu is saying? Or don't we think that if they came to that country, they can maybe change because they're away from their homes?
I didn't say money exchanged hands. I didn't think money exchanged hands. I said there could have been promises of diplomatic aid.
Yeah, aid, but you were suspecting something, and
there has to have been an incentive. I don't think that's all. I don't know. I'm not very sure what the incentive was. I could go down a whole laundry list of possible things like I said, development aid, diplomatic favor, or is there even pressure behind closed doors? Were they pressurized to say we can't be embarrassed as the United States that nobody is willing to take on these people? So they found a weak actor to pressurize so that they can pull this off. I don't know.
But
ask yourself one question.
Baby, my question was, Africa is known to be a hospitable continent. We are naturally hospitable people. So if they were requested to receive these guys and accepted, would that one be bad? That was my question to both of you.
Internationally, it's wrong, first and foremost. Because if you claim these guys committed crimes on your turf, then how do you transport them to another country with crimes how are they going to integrate into that country when they have all these crimes hanging around their heads? These crimes were not committed in the African countries. So does the African judicial system where they are at have jurisdiction over the crimes they committed here? Those are questions you ask. Is America going to prosecute them from there? Why don't you prosecute them here? Because they committed crimes. Because any sensible government would not accept a criminal without trying them. That's why when we come here, we go through a very comprehensive background check and all that, whether you're a criminal, whether you're this and that. So what makes us think it's okay to get criminals who didn't commit those crimes in Africa, wherever they were taken, to be imprisoned there or to dump them there when they are criminals, unless that African country is under the jurisdiction of this country, that our laws can extend to that country. They will be tried there. So what you're saying, criminals are being picked up without being tried for their crimes and dumped in different countries. What about justice for those that have been wronged? How do they get justice here? So what if that criminal kills someone here and you just dump him in Africa and he walks free? What about the person who lost their loved one here? So those are some of the technical questions that have to be answered. How do they face trial? Because they need justice. You know, at the end of the day, we are all human beings regardless of where you are. And that's why we have all these laws, the laws that are in place internationally to protect a human being wherever you are, regardless of who you are. A human being is unique. There is nowhere in this world you can go to a store and buy a life. Once you mismanage that life and lose it, you can't get it back. So any abuse of human rights, all of us must condemn it.
Chikundo, what's your comment on the humanitarian side of it?
Humanitarian side? Well, before I get to that, I mean, I have to agree with Agaba. Why send these people overseas? Why make it somebody else's problem? Let if they committed crime here, let this be prosecuted here. I don't think you can say I'm being humanitarian. Nobody wants to. Let me just take this individual. What are you going to do? What with them in the long term? Are you going to imprison them forever? You know, I think I don't even get there. I hang up on that very point that Mr. Agaba makes. Why dump them into another country?
Fair enough. Thank you very much. And as we conclude, we had elections back home in Uganda, and these were primary elections. The media is awash. There are so many stories that are coming out. And one of them, of course, that caught my eye was that it was an archaic way of doing things, lining up. And you know what it means when you are lining up behind your candidate. We used to have that one until our constitution said that we should be doing that secret ballot because of many reasons, as we saw. Then at the same time, these elections were mad with violence, money exchanged hands, and there's a famous one where people were saying, really? Why are we returning these old guys? And Moses Ali, sorry to mention him, and many others. So I wanted a quick comment on both of you, and then we should be wrapping up. And I don't know what's come first. Chibundu, you are the oldest, because they say when you talk of old bones, the old people that
in Uganda, what are we talking about? We old bones. We still. By the way, we old people. I must say, we're still very relevant. We have the wisdom to guide you, the young people, as you keep going to help you shape your future. So you just can't dismiss us like that. But in any case,
I think we're all in the same age bracket.
But in any case, I mean, the future. Look, like when we started, the African continent has the youngest population today. So the more they get involved, the more they're given opportunities, the more they're mentored and allowed to also put a finger on that scale of what the future is going to be like for them. It's good for me. I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that old should stick around and until further notice. No, I think the younger people getting the opportunities, if they are actually challenging and pushing some older folks out of the way, so be it. I don't really have a problem with that.
Fair enough. Agaba, you're free to comment on anything. I mentioned so many things. The old people coming back. Moses Ali, I saw your comment on Moses Ali. We have people like Professor Camont coming back and others. Agaba, on the primary elections.
You brought this topic at the end of our discussion, but I think this topic is very broad, looking at the political landscape in Uganda and Africa in general. I do not think Africans understand the concept of democracy. I think we've just copied what is in the West and pasted back in Africa without understanding what this is. Because when you look, let me take an example of Uganda, because I'm very conversant with that, my ears on the ground every day on what is happening. I've been following the Ugandan politics since I was back there. You remember our talk shows we used to have with you on radio. When you look at Mr. Museveni probably could have left the power a long time ago if there's a current kind of opposition, or if there was, if Ugandans were educated enough to understand exactly why they vote. Because if you look at how, before discussing even candidates, why do we vote? Today you have a guy like Walukaga coming in as MP. Why would even Walukaga dream of going for such a position? This is a guy who didn't go to school, cannot write his name. Parliament is not a place where you go to sing, to do your music, dance, and drama. No, Parliament is serious business. It's legislating, making laws for the country. You want Walukaga to go there. You had a Katorwama there. So before we even go to the top leaders, let's first look at the quality of the voters.
Let me interject, because in order for one to be a member of parliament in the Parliament of Uganda, minimum requirement is senior 6. As long as you have senior 6 or an equivalent, then you go into the parliament. So when you mention about Walukaga, Katorwama, as long as they satisfied the electoral body, then they're in parliament.
And our laws were, why I said it was copy and paste. When you go to England, because we follow that for the most part, in England, a high school student is almost at the same level with our diploma or degree student back home. You deal with them, they run shows, they do a lot of things, they do a lot of courses, and these are already civilized countries that exposure alone puts you at a different level. But you have a young man who finishes senior 6 in Uganda in a rural setting, cannot read and write, but at the end of the day wants to go to parliament. You have this boy who, the late, what was his name? The boy who died, this guy, the MP Kawempe, Segirinya. Segirinya comes to parliament. You see, in Uganda, we've mixed activism with legislation. Legislation is making laws. There must be a high level of comprehension of what you do, what you discuss in parliament. But the quality of people that we are sending to parliament cannot put up a challenge to the current leadership we have in the country. These are peasants who are easily bribed by the establishment, and they fall in line. You do, even the opposition. Look at what Noop just brought. If you go back to Noop and sit and say, no, you brought these guys. Let's go back to the drawing board. What were they able to do? These guys were just filling seats in parliament. Majority of them.
I want to bring in a rejoinder that Article 1 of our Constitution, the Republic of Uganda, says power belongs to the people. So when these people speak, then
do you know why I first brought the disclaimer that we copied what was in the West and brought it into Africa without understanding our people? What I'm trying to say here, you see, China is moving away from that kind of democracy. It's going more into merit, and that's why I want Africans to go Two, forget about what is written on paper, because what is written on paper, the selfish people have exploited it. Because if you give Museveni Walkaga, Museveni will rule more 20 years. Because Walkaga is not going to challenge him. Walkaga does not have the knowledge. Walkaga does not have the language to debate with this guy unless he goes on the streets and starts fighting him. But Walkaga will not be able to interpret the law. So was the Katoluwama. Now, look at Nupi. I'm sorry, I'm everywhere on this. I'm not generic, but because of time. Look at No. When you look at No, Noob does even not know who they are fighting. They don't know who their competitor is. They don't understand the person.
Maybe for the sake of our viewers, Noob is the National Unity Platform.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they do not understand who Mr. Museveni and how he plays his politics. Secondly, Noob has raised a lot of questions. Is Noob really competing for state power, or Noob came to eliminate opposition? Let me give my reasoning. Besigye was the leading political player, and Besigye was a serious contender for the highest office in the land. Noob comes on the scene. They realize they are very popular. Instead of coming together with these other guys and say, how do we create an alliance and give an alternative to the current establishment, they decided to come on their own, even when they knew they didn't lack experience. Luckily enough, some experienced people like Mpuga and these other lawyers all joined them. But now you fight Mpuga over receiving 500 million, which was a bribe. I also don't agree Mpuga should have received that money because the guy is fighting corruption. But what again raised more eyebrows, when Nalukola goes into parliament, I think he was paid for a month he had not been in parliament, he had not worked. That means he didn't deserve to get that money because he had not been in parliament. They give him a candle list and he accepts them, but you don't hear No also criticizing him for accepting money he had not worked for. That's still taxpayers' money. So you create a double standard here. This guy accepts money, parliament saying it's a casino. Thank you for your service. Then this guy comes to parliament. The speaker of parliament says, no, we know what you've gone through all this. You've lost money and all that. We're going to give you the full month, even when you aren't in parliament. They give you money, you accept it. At that point, would have seen if truly Bobby Wine was fair, would have come up and say, hey, you received this money, you did work for that taxpayers' money, you should have said no. So morally, it was wrong, regardless of the difference in the amount, for both leaders to accept taxpayers' money that they didn't deserve. Then another issue that really concerns me, knowing who General Museveni is, who on earth, anybody that knows Mr. Museveni, would allow his competitor, his main competitor, seeing how he has treated Kano Besigye, give you a bulletproof car, fund your party, you live that kind of a luxurious life, and then let you stand tall like that? What is happening to our politics? Then, if you're talking about NRM primaries, NRM is already won. Museveni has already won this election. Look at the parties that have come up. They're all in Uganda. And that's where Bobby, the National Unity Platform has its biggest base. Now, these political parties that have all mushroomed towards the elections are all going to share the same votes Noob had, the support Noob had, implying that they are all bidding for one candidate. So as much as we want to discuss elections and the rest, to be honest, it's a one-sided race. We already know that. These other political parties that have come up are not in for winning, challenging Mr. Museveni. It's because of this iPod money that it comes to the parties that everybody is targeting. They want to share that same money with Bobby Wine. In Uganda, we have this Kufidis, Abuteya Galiza. Now, they know this guy is getting all this, so why don't we also form up all this? They call them Galis. Why don't we form up also our Galis to challenge this guy so that we can also maybe benefit from the national cake? That's why they are going there. Why would Munyagwa, I don't trust Nsereko being a genuine contender, but he's also there. Maybe the Muntus, but it doesn't make sense where all these parties are coming from, and they're all concentrated in Buganda. They are not countrywide. So how are you vying for national positions when you're not all over the country? So there is a lot of question marks that have the opposition parties themselves actually defeated themselves without government fighting them. So there are so many things that are not clear to us, the ordinary folks. Because what would motivate, you ask yourself, what would motivate Museveni at this time when he's almost at his weakest to come back and offer himself? Did he see a huge gap in the opposition, in his challengers, since he already had the main guy where he wanted him to be? So these are some of the questions as people who love their country that we have to openly discuss and see how we move forward, even after Museveni leaves.
Yeah, but coming back to the primaries, Agaba, I appreciate whatever you're mentioning about the opposition. Of course, it's unfortunate that we have nobody from North to respond. But what we're looking at was just the concluded elections. One, we are looking at the violence and what is the opposition, for instance, learning from what NRM did. Are we going to see more violence in the coming elections? Are we seeing more money in the coming elections? And then Chigundu says for him, he's very okay with us having old people. So, I give an example, Moses Ali, and the other guys who have come back. Yet, we already have young parties like NOP, National Youth Platform, which brought young people, much as some of them you're giving them names. We have the Patriotic League of Uganda, PLU, which I thought would probably have, brought in younger people, but we also saw those guys of NUP, the Kagabos and others being rejected out, the ACOL. What does this one mean? And Chibud, of course, for him, he says he's okay with old people coming in. And he, as a young man, I would have wanted your comment on these old men coming in, and yet we have, younger people and the younger version of NRM, which we thought would have, helped.
The first and foremost, the infighting we saw in the primaries, in the NRM primaries, is a no confidence in the opposition. Why would people who are so much fed up of a party after 4 years still fight tooth and nail to win positions in a party when there are other newer parties where they would have maybe leadership positions? That shows lack of confidence in the opposition. And because of that, that's why the older generation is taking advantage of that the other side has nothing to offer. So we can still go on. We don't have a challenge. We've not come out to challenge these old guys. And also, I think that people are still not seeing capable leaders emerge from their communities to replace what they have. And if people like Moses Ali was a very big disappointment for me, for people to vote Moses Ali. That kept me asking myself, we cannot keep every day blaming Mr. Museveni when the people are making such choices. Even Kadaga. I think also Kadaga, it was time for Kadaga to, take a break from politics and focus on her health, because we see how she looks like right now. She needs really to retire. And we expected a lot of these older guys to retire because of pressure. Some of them came out to even say, this is my last term, because they realize there is no competence. What the youth have done, we've resorted to talk shows, TikTok and everybody has become an analyst. You see the elite in Kampala on TV, Namwendas talk big, all these guys, the lawyers, but none of them is going to offer themselves to the people to contest for these positions. But at the end of the day, they're the people who are going to come and talk about the violence and how, like me now, how NOP is not doing what they're supposed to do because we've shied away from offering ourselves to represent our people. And Museveni sees this. Museveni is a very smart man. Museveni is a good reader of situations, is very strategic. He sees there is no challenge. And in this election, he's going to win almost 100% because you have the leading opposition guy who's young, younger than me, does not have an idea of what's going on because all his focus is Museveni. Once you put Museveni as your focus, you've failed. Before I came here, I remember I had a meeting with the General Mugisha Muntu, and he told me one thing, and I believe that. He said the challenge is not Mr. Museveni alone, but the biggest issue is when he leaves, will the problems that we experience, will they have gone? And his conclusion was, unless we change attitude as a people, nothing will change because these very leaders come from us. So if we have the same mentality, the same attitude that politics is making us rich instead of service, that's how it's going to happen no matter who comes into leadership. So for me, I think it's a bigger issue than just who we elect, who offers themselves what the Constitution says. I think it's about changing our attitude as a people, come together, whether it's PLU, or whether it's NOP, whether it's DP, all these small parties. I think time has come now that we are very convinced that Museveni is going to win. But we also see Museveni's health or life does not give him much time ahead of him. Let's all agree as a country to save ourselves a lot of pain. Come together at a round table and say, guys, where this is a transition period, where do we want this country to go? Who are the leaders? The more we continue to run on Western principles of democracy, we are going to remain in this kind of mess. And to be honest, that's where they want us, because the more we are divided, the more we're going to be exploited.
Let me bring Chigundu here. Chigundu, we saw these elections, Buganda, especially the central, Kampala, where the opposition is very strong. The turn-up was very, very low. What do you think the turn-up was low? Is it because NRM is not strong in Uganda, in the central region, or because there is they don't have support in the Buganda region? Because I know you come from the Buganda kingdom, you are a true Muganda, you're proud of Muganda. What would you think caused the low turn-up in Buganda?
I think the central region, there's been a lot of, I'm going to say, intimidation and violence, intimidation particularly in my view, because like you said, the idea of lining up behind individuals, I think that was still the system being used, right? So you have to be brave enough to go stand up behind the other person, and or everybody else is watching your choice. So that creates a sense of fear because people have been intimidated into where they're afraid to speak out, to express themselves. So it's not a true depiction of support because it is not a secret ballot, but it's an indication of, in my view, intimidation. It was the biggest contributor. People are afraid of being seen to have made a choice one way or another. I think I don't know if I can conclude that it is lack of support because I don't have that data, I don't have that information. All I know is that people are afraid of the voting method, of lining up behind. It no longer works. It doesn't allow people to exercise real choice. Now you're having, people are afraid of going against their friend, relative, or whatever. So it's really not a good way for people to exercise their choices. So in my view, it is intimidation.
Yes.
Chigundu brings a very important aspect of intimidation. So, and of course, this archaic way of lining up. For him, he thinks probably the low turn-up, especially in the central region, was because of that. But we have in the West, where NRM is believed to be strong, but we are seeing that money was the most issue here. That people who were lining up were being given money to vote.
Now, I saw some of those videos. Is that are these real stories, or where people are being lined up and giving that money? Because
yes.
Yeah,
reliable sources. Reliable sources
I
are
saw
saying
videos.
yes, they are very true. And remember, these are NRM stronghold. And one of the reasons that it's coming out was because once there are some areas in the Western region, when you come out as an NRM supporter, then you're automatically an MP. So that's why they were using a lot of money. So my question to you, Agaba, was in Central here, the turn-up was low because of reasons alluded by Salo Chigondo. Now, for you, the question I'm asking, in the West, where they are very strong, we are seeing money exchanging hands. And there are places like Zimbabwe, where you are very sure that it's very strong NRM, but we also saw a lot of violence. You saw the fight between Sechikubo and General Rashande and many others. So you, what is your take? I mean, on that, is it, what do you think happened?
First and foremost, let me say this. Our politics has been so much polarized in a way that there's a lot of intimidation. Like Mr. Chigundo has said, lining up behind people is very intimidating. You may not want to support the candidate who's very popular, and yet Bobby has promised Godfrey, I will support you, and I end up not lining up behind you. That's going to create enmity in community. So people are trying to avoid that conflict, because that kind of conflict, because if you look at Wemiyaga, where you said General Rasande, that was a very violent election, Sechikubo and the Kabasi and the general. There are people that for a long time have been supporting Sechikubo, because these are the same people that crossed from the lady Sechikubo to the general, because he just is a newcomer. He did come with people to vote for him. It's the very people that have been voting. So when you look at the people that did not want Sechikubo, but at the same time don't want to be seen supporting the other guy, to create enmity with this guy, decide to stay away. So that could be a contribution to avoid conflict and being victimized by the supporters of the other candidate. In some parts. Then also maybe money played a role. Some people received money and didn't want to be seen, like crossing lines or betraying the people whose money they received. And those could have been factors that played a role. Like Mr. Chigundo said, I think the lining up system is still very intimidating, scares away voters. They don't want to be victimized. So they decide for peace to keep away. But in Buganda, in particular, like I observed, in Buganda, it wasn't so much about either money or intimidation. I think it was more about people being either disgusted or frustrated with their leaders, because we know that Buganda is is the biggest opposition to the current government in power, the NRM. But when you look at their alternatives that they had, and you see what is happening in that space, people get frustrated. Now, when you see the new platform, the National Unity for Platform, being the leading party, and you see its candidates, each core candidates, credible candidates, the elite, leaving and forming other parties, that's dividing the party. When you look at Puga has a party now. Then when you look at this Buganda, is it Buganda First? Hassan was no. Then you look at General Bijirwa. General Bijirwa was also NUP. Eastern Revolution now comes into Common Man's Party with Munyagwa. They also form a party. Now, you see that all these parties actually came from DP, then went started FDC. From FDC, DFF, now they have all these small parties. They first went to NOPE. Now they've broken away from NOPE. And because of that, because of that enmity amongst them, they cannot unite. So that frustrates people. People feel so frustrated. People are not going to go for NRM because they don't like NRM in Buganda. But at the same time, we also know that people are deciding to keep away from politics because they are not seeing any change. Because when you see what is happening in the country, you ask yourself, will I make a difference? And people have different challenges. This is not their most top priority. So I think our leadership and our politics in the country has played a greater role in keeping away people, because a determined people, a military or police cannot stop them from coming out to exercise their constitutional right if they want to. It's other factors like betrayal by their leaders that normally keeps them away. Our actions. Now, when you see Museveni, like I've said again, I was shocked to see after 40 years, people are even fighting to the extent of killing each other to get a yellow ticket. We will not be seeing that. We'll be seeing the opposition with massive numbers, people fighting for these tickets. But in any case, we are seeing them thinning, and NRM has gained more. So that to me speaks volumes in terms of how the turn-up is going to be. And I honestly believe even in the general elections, the turn-up is going to be low, because already people do not have confidence in the opposition that the opposition will capture power. So the question is going to be, Kruaching and Kulonda, why do I have to go and vote if we already know the outcome? Because that's the general perception. General perception is very, very, very important in a lot of what we do publicly. So things tend to swing towards what the general public is thinking. And in Uganda's situation, to be honest, even if it were me there, I don't think I would really lose sleep over the election, knowing where it's going to go.
Okay, so we may be here until tomorrow, but time is not our best ally. I just wanted your parting shot. I begin with Chigundu. What are your parting shots? And then we conclude, and we agree to meet next time. Chigundu, your parting shot?
Yeah, unfortunately, my camera just died. So, but in any case, at least you can hear me. I thank you, gentlemen, for this conversation. It's been very interesting. You guys have definitely your ears on the ground, and you bring a lot of depth and experience to this. It's nice to be working with you on this new discussion we call Weekly News Roundup. Even though we went deeply into the weeds a little bit with what we are still discussing headlines, but I thank you very much, you guys, for taking your time and wanting to do that. I think
the topic can stay, but the conversation can, we are all rounder, we're journalists, we're everything, so we touch anything that we think our viewer wants to know.
Absolutely, okay. Absolutely. So I go back to the topic that is so dear to me, which was how our politics engages with our chiefdoms. I must say, we are in it together. Uganda is what it is because of how we formed. We have to tolerate each other. We have to be willing to live side by side, and we have to have the opportunity to continue to engage in our traditions, because at the end of the day, that's what defines our identities, and it is with all those identities that we we are proud Ugandans, so we have to be allowed to continue to engage with that and recognize the importance of that. I think our politics is starting to where some people might be interested in using that to divide us. No, we should resist that seriously, but instead harness that to bring us together instead of allowing us to be divided along those lines. So I thought I would say that on the exit.
What a better conclusion. Tolerate each other and live side by side. I hope the viewers are listening and they will take heed of that. Agaba, your parting shot?
I want to thank you, gentlemen, for the opportunity to be able to share my views, my opinions on a lot of issues that are affecting us back home and what is going on globally. My conclusion would be, let's work together for a better country. Let's come together, work together, strengthen our rule of law, because that's what's going to bring us together as a country. Like Mr. Chigundo has said, respect each other's way of life for the betterment of our country. And I look forward to discussing more issues that affect us in hope of finding solutions and common ground. This was the first of its kind, and like he said, true, we're all over the place. I hope going forward we will be more more focused on issues at hand. I thank you once again for this.
Work together for a better country. That's a good one. So, gentlemen, it was nice talking to you this morning, this evening, from wherever you are. A disclaimer is that the views that are expressed on this channel are for the individuals, not by Tukikube Media, not so Mr. Chigundo.
Absolutely.
So we are here to make sure that we give you a balanced the views. We're not political. We want to make sure that we engage our audience. And we said it's going to be bi-weekly. So please leave the comments. As Agaba said in the beginning, if you have any adverts you want to be sponsored, please let us know. Tukikube Media is on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's on TikTok. Please reach us out and we'll be here to serve you. I was proud to host this talk show. My name is Godfrey Kaitarama. We will see you next time. Thank you very much and bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Yes. Yes, ate bwembanga mugenda ku mikolo ng'egyo nga mwagala okufuna ku bwambalo obwakabingo obwo mbaga nga muzikoledde mu Uganda munoonye oba naffe aba Angie's Creations. Angie Creations bakola obwambalo buno bwakabi. Tobeera ku mukolo ne gutanyuma weefunira akambalo. Angie Creations bajja kukolako buli kimu kyonna kyewetaaga. Nti bukya Lubanga lwa Mindi omusumba Tom balaba mugerwa owa Mutunde Christian Fellowship agenda kubeera wano mu Chicago